The day my wife told me she wanted a divorce because I'd changed after her cancer treatment. I was sitting in my accountant's office, staring at $437,000 in unexplained charges to hotels, jewelry stores, and luxury restaurants I'd never heard of, all signed by my business partner while I was sleeping in hospital chairs for 3 years. If you've got about 20 minutes and maybe some coffee, settle in. This one's heavy, but I promise it's worth it. So here's the question that probably just popped into your head. How does someone steal almost $500,000 from you without you noticing? Well, let me ask you this. When was the last time you checked your business bank statements while your wife was actively dying? Yeah, that's what I thought. This is the story of how I spent 3 years being the perfect husband, caregiver, and friend, and how the two people I loved most repaid me by planning my destruction while I was too exhausted to notice. It's about discovering the worst betrayal imaginable, planning the most calculated revenge of my life, and then having to live with what I'd done. It's about learning that sometimes you are enough, even when the people you love convince you otherwise. And it's about finding out that the best revenge isn't what you take from someone. It's what you build for yourself after they're gone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is David Mitchell. I'm 39 years old now, but this story really starts when I was 36 and still believed in things like loyalty and forever. I met Rachel at a medical conference in Chicago 13 years ago. I was selling pharmaceutical equipment. She was a marketing director for a healthcare tech startup. We got drunk on hotel bar wine and talked until 4 in the morning about nothing and everything. Married 18 months later. Standard American dream stuff. Thomas Carter was my best friend. Had been since 4th grade. We grew up together in Raleigh, went to different colleges, but stayed close. And 6 years ago, we started a medical supply distribution company together, Med Supply Solutions, LLC. I handled sales and client relationships. He managed operations and finances. We were pulling in about $3.2 million a year in revenue by the time everything fell apart. Not bad for two guys who started with a $15,000 loan and a Costco membership. Thomas was the kind of friend everyone thinks they have, but very few actually do, or at least that's what I thought. He was my best man. He was there when my dad died. He was the first person I called when Rachel and I had our miscarriage. He was family. The cancer showed up on a Tuesday. Rachel was 34. Routine mammogram, which she almost skipped because she was too busy at work. Stage 3, invasive ductal carcinoma. The doctor used words like aggressive and immediate intervention and significant treatment protocol. I remember sitting in that consultation room with its motivational posters and dying ficus plant, holding Rachel's hand while she stared at the wall and didn't cry. I cried enough for both of us that night. The treatment plan was brutal. 6 months of dose-dense chemotherapy, then a double mastectomy, then radiation, then experimental immunotherapy if the first rounds didn't work. The oncologist, Dr. Jennifer Santos, laid it all out like she was describing a road trip. "It's going to be hard," she said, which is doctor speak for this is going to destroy your entire life for the foreseeable future. And it did. I quit my traveling sales job the next week, took a pay cut to go full-time at our company so I could be present for Rachel's appointments. Thomas didn't even blink when I told him. Just said, "Do what you need to do, brother. I've got the business." Looking back, I should have wondered why he was so eager to take over everything. But I was too grateful to question it. The first year was the worst. Rachel lost her hair in clumps in the shower. I'd find it stuck to the drain, wrapped around my fingers when I shampooed what was left. She bought 3 different wigs and hated all of them. Started wearing baseball caps instead. She lost 28 pounds, even though I made her protein shakes every morning. Her skin turned gray. Her eyes got this hollow look, like someone had scooped out everything that made her Rachel and left just the shell. I became a professional caregiver, without meaning to. Learned to clean vomit out of carpet at 3 a.m. without gagging. Learned to give injections when her veins got too fragile for the nurse to find. Learned to sleep sitting up in a hospital chair because sometimes she needed me there and there was nowhere else to be. I lost 35 pounds myself, went from 190 to 155. Stopped playing basketball with Thomas's Thursday night league. Stopped reading. Stopped doing anything that wasn't work or Rachel or the crushing weight of trying to keep both our lives from completely disintegrating. Thomas was there for all of it. More than anyone else, honestly. Our other friends did the casserole drop-off thing for the first month, then slowly disappeared because cancer makes people uncomfortable. But Thomas showed up. Every week, sometimes twice a week. Brought groceries when I forgot to shop. Sat with Rachel when I had unavoidable meetings. Drove her to appointments when I couldn't get away from work. When the insurance company denied coverage for the experimental immunotherapy, $200,000 out of pocket, Thomas offered to pay for it. Just like that. "Use the company emergency fund," he said. "We'll figure out the details later. She needs this." I actually cried when he said that. Hugged him in the parking lot of the oncology center like a child. "I can't ever repay you for this," I said. He clapped me on the back. "You're my brother, David. You don't have to." I should have been enough. That thought started creeping in somewhere around month 18. Rachel had good days and bad days, but even on the good days, she was different with me. Distant. She'd smile at me like I was a kind stranger instead of her husband. But when Thomas visited, she laughed. Real laughs. The kind she used to give me before the cancer, before the caregiver role, before I became the person who saw her at her absolute worst. I told myself it was natural. Thomas represented normalcy, fun, the world outside of sickness, and sterile hospital rooms. I represented thermometers and pill schedules and the weight of survival. Of course, she preferred his company. It didn't mean anything, except it did. The cracks were there if I'd been awake enough to see them. Rachel started going to a Tuesday night cancer support group at our church. She'd come home lighter, happier, more like herself. I was relieved she had an outlet, never questioned it. She stopped wearing her wedding ring. Said the chemo made her fingers swell differently, and the ring didn't fit right anymore. I believed her because why wouldn't I? She was on her phone constantly, angled away from me when she typed. I figured she was texting her support group friends or her sister. Never occurred to me to check. Thomas missed a business meeting in month 22. First time in 6 years. Said he forgot. I laughed it off. Everyone's allowed one mistake, right? In month 33, I found a purple silk scarf in Rachel's car. Not her style. She hated scarves, said they made her neck itch. I asked her about it. She said someone from her support group must have left it. I put it in the lost and found box at church. Never saw anyone claim it. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was. But here's the thing about being a caregiver. You're so focused on keeping someone alive that you don't have energy left to wonder if they still love you. You just assume love is a constant like gravity. Turns out love is more like trust. Once the foundation cracks, the whole thing comes down fast. Year 3, Rachel's scans came back clear. The immunotherapy worked. Dr. Santos used the word remission, and I watched Rachel's face transform like someone had switched on a light inside her. She cried. I cried. We held each other in that exam room, and I thought, we made it. We fucking made it. I started planning our second honeymoon that same week. Hawaii. We'd always wanted to go, but never had the money. I'd been secretly saving $8,000 in a separate account, built up dollar by dollar from freelance consulting work I did at night when Rachel was asleep. Booked flights to Maui for 2 months out. Didn't tell her. Wanted it to be a surprise. 2 weeks after the official remission declaration, I threw a party. Invited everyone, friends, family, Rachel's support group, people from church, our backyard, string lights, catered food because I was too exhausted to cook. Thomas gave a toast. I remember every word. "To the strongest woman I know," he said, raising his glass toward Rachel. "You fought like hell and you won. And to David, who never left her side, You're the definition of a good man." Everyone clapped. Rachel was crying. I was crying. Thomas was crying. They were standing too close to each other. I noticed it in that weird peripheral vision way, the kind of noticing your brain does before your conscious mind catches up. Her hand brushed his arm when she laughed at something someone said. His hand touched the small of her back when he guided her toward the dessert table. Small things. Explainable things. I went inside to get more ice from the garage freezer. When I came back, I looked through the kitchen window before opening the door. They were on the back porch, alone. Her head was on his shoulder. His hand was in her hair. What little had grown back. They were both crying, but not the happy crying from earlier. This was different, intimate, the kind of crying you do with someone who knows your secrets. I stood there for 37 seconds. I counted later when I couldn't sleep. 37 seconds of watching my wife and my best friend in a moment I wasn't supposed to see. Then she pulled back and smiled at him. The smile I used to get, before cancer made me a nurse instead of a husband. He touched her face. She leaned into it. I walked back inside, put the ice down, smiled at a guest who asked if I was okay, served cake, thanked people for coming, acted normal. But something in me changed in those 37 seconds. I knew. I didn't know what exactly, not yet. But I knew something was very wrong, and I knew I couldn't confront it yet because confronting it meant it was real. So I buried it, went to bed that night next to my wife, stared at the ceiling, and started making plans. The next morning I woke up early. Rachel was still asleep. I studied her face. Still beautiful, even with the thinness, even with the faint scars visible above her tank top line. I thought about 3 years of hospital chairs, 3 years of holding her hair while she vomited, 3 years of believing we were in this together. Then I got up, went to my home office, and logged into our phone carrier account. It took me 15 minutes to find the call and text logs. We were on a family plan, had been since we got married. Never occurred to me to check before. Why would I? I trusted her completely, which is maybe the stupidest thing I've ever admitted out loud. 247 text messages to Thomas's number in the past month, most of them between 10 p.m. and midnight, after I'd gone to bed, exhausted from another 14-hour day of work and caretaking. I couldn't see the content because of encryption, but I could see the timestamps. The duration of calls, the patterns, and the pattern was clear as fucking day. I sat there for 2 hours going through months of records, 18 months of escalating communication, long phone calls while I was in business meetings, texts sent during doctor's appointments I couldn't attend, a 47-minute call the night I'd stayed late at work to close a big contract. She'd told me she was asleep by 9. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely click the mouse. Part of me wanted to stop looking, wanted to close the laptop and pretend I'd never seen any of it, wanted to believe there was some explanation that didn't end with my entire life being a lie. But I kept looking, downloaded everything, saved it to an encrypted folder, because if this was what I thought it was, I was going to need evidence. Rachel woke up around 9. Found me still in my office. "You're up early," she said, kissing the top of my head like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't been texting my best friend at midnight while I slept 10 feet away. "Couldn't sleep," I said, which was true. I hadn't slept in 7 hours. "Just catching up on work." "You work too hard," she said it like she cared. Like she hadn't been lying to me for a year and a half while I sacrificed everything to keep her alive. I should have been enough. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. I gave her everything, my career, my health, my sanity, 3 years of my life. I should have been enough, but I wasn't. And sitting there, looking at hundreds of secret messages to my best friend, I realized I needed to know why. Over the next 9 days, I became someone I didn't recognize. Methodical, cold, calculated. The kind of person who investigates their own wife like she's a criminal suspect. Which, it turned out, she kinda was. I created a fake email address and requested a complete data export from our phone carrier. It arrived 3 days later. A 52-page PDF of every call, text, and data usage on our plan for the past 2 years. I printed it out, highlighted patterns, cross-referenced dates. The texts spiked during my out-of-town trips, the few I still took for major client meetings. Long calls happened during Rachel's supposed support group nights. Most damning. Multiple texts were sent during medical appointments I'd had to miss for work, appointments where Thomas had volunteered to drive her instead. I felt physically sick going through it all, like I was drowning in data that proved my worst fears while simultaneously wanting to believe I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation. There wasn't. Rachel's phone had a passcode now. It didn't used to. I noticed it one night when we were watching TV and her phone buzzed. She picked it up, turned it away from me, entered 6 digits I couldn't see, read something, smiled slightly, and put it down without sharing. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just Lisa," she said, her sister. Sending me a meme. I nodded, didn't believe her, couldn't prove it. Not yet. That same night I couldn't sleep. Got up at 3 a.m., went to my office, and started reviewing our business accounts. I'm half owner of the company, have full access to all financial records, though I'd basically handed day-to-day management to Thomas while I dealt with Rachel's treatment. Trusted him completely, which was again catastrophically stupid. I started with the previous month's expenses, then went back 6 months, then a year, then 18 months, and that's when I found them. The weird charges that didn't make sense. $15,000 to Apex Medical Consulting in March. I'd never heard of them. Googled the name. Nothing came up. No website, no business registration I could find. $8,500 to Blue Ridge Wholesale in April. Another unknown vendor. Then hotels. The Four Seasons Charlotte, $3,200 over a weekend. The Ritz-Carlton Naples, $4,800. I cross-referenced the dates with my calendar. The Four Seasons charge was from when I'd been in Raleigh for a week helping my mom after her hip surgery. I'd called Rachel every night. She said she was home, resting, going to her support group. She was at a luxury hotel with my business partner. My vision actually blurred when I realized it. I had to put my head between my knees to keep from passing out. This wasn't just an affair. This was theft. He was stealing from our company to fund their relationship. And based on the running total I was calculating in an Excel spreadsheet with shaking hands, he'd stolen well over $100,000. I spent the rest of that night documenting everything: screenshots, transaction records, cross-references with travel dates. By the time the sun came up, I had a file that would destroy him. And I still didn't know if Rachel knew about the money. Sunday morning, Rachel was in the shower. Her phone was on the nightstand. It was locked, but the preview notifications were still visible on the screen. It lit up. Text from T.E. She'd saved his name with a heart emoji. The preview said, "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible." I read it 3 times, felt my stomach turn over, put the phone down exactly where it had been, heard the shower turn off, counted to 10, stood up, walked out of the bedroom. Rachel came out a few minutes later, found me in the kitchen staring at the coffee maker. "You okay?" she asked. "You look pale." "Just tired," I said. "Q3 projections are stressing me out." She hugged me from behind, kissed my shoulder blade. "You work too hard. You should take a vacation." I wanted to scream, wanted to spin around and ask her how the fuck she could stand there, hugging me, when she was fucking my best friend with money he'd stolen from our company. Wanted to demand answers, to make her explain, to force her to see what she'd done to me. Instead, I said, "Maybe you're right. I'll think about it." because I realized something in that moment. Confronting her now in our kitchen when I was too emotional and she could lie her way out of it, that wouldn't work. That would give her time to cover her tracks, to coordinate with Thomas, to destroy evidence. That would make this messy and he said, she said, and inconclusive. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I needed to be cold, calculated. I needed to be absolutely certain of every fact before I moved. Because you only get one shot at something like this, and I wasn't going to waste it on accusations. She could, didn't I? I couldn't confront her, not yet, because confronting her meant it was real, final, irreversible, and I wasn't ready for it to be real. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a private investigator. Alan Rodriguez, our business accountant, had a friend who was a lawyer. The lawyer had a guy who did discreet investigations. 48 hours later, I was sitting in a Starbucks across from a middle-aged man named Marcus, who looked like someone's boring uncle and apparently specialized in infidelity cases. I need to know the truth, I told him. Whatever it is, pictures, patterns, everything. Marcus didn't judge, just pulled out a contract and a rate sheet. $200 an hour plus expenses. I'll need a $5,000 retainer. Most cases take 1 to 2 weeks if the subjects aren't being careful. And based on what you're telling me, they're not. I wrote the check the same day. Used money from the Hawaii fund. Seemed fitting in a dark way. The money I'd saved to celebrate our survival was now funding proof of her betrayal. Marcus worked for 9 days. I went about my normal life. Went to work. Came home. Had dinner with Rachel. Watched TV. Had sex twice. She initiated. I went through the motions, felt nothing but a kind of distant disgust. Texted Thomas about business stuff. Acted completely normal. I was dying inside, but I smiled. Because I'd learned something important during those 3 years of caregiving. You can do impossible things if the alternative is worse. And the alternative, confronting them without absolute proof, giving them a chance to gaslight me, to make me doubt my own sanity, was worse than the temporary hell of pretending everything was fine. Marcus called on day 9. I've got what you need. Can we meet? We met at a different coffee shop, one nowhere near my neighborhood. He handed me a manila folder. It was thick. I'm sorry, he said before I opened it. For what it's worth, I opened it. The first photo was them at a beach, Hilton Head. Rachel was wearing a red bikini I'd never seen. Thomas had his arm around her waist. They were laughing. The timestamp said it was from 3 months ago. The weekend Rachel told me she was going to a cancer survivors retreat in Asheville. The second photo was them entering Thomas's condo building, 11 p.m. The angle showed the parking garage. Rachel's car was clearly visible. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago, a Tuesday, support group night. The third photo was them leaving his condo, 7 a.m. Same clothes as the night before. Rachel carrying the same purse. I flipped through more. Them shopping together at a jewelry store. Thomas buying her a necklace, purple amethyst, $370 according to the receipt Marcus had somehow obtained. Them having dinner at a restaurant downtown, holding hands across the table. Them kissing in a parking garage, her body pressed against his car, his hands in her hair. And then the last photo, the one that broke something in me that still hasn't fully healed. It was taken through a window at his condo. You could see them in bed together, her head on his bare chest. Both of them laughing about something. She looked happy. Really, genuinely happy. The kind of happy I hadn't seen on her face in 3 years. I stared at that photo for 20 minutes in my car in that parking lot. Didn't cry. Couldn't cry. Just felt this enormous emptiness opening up inside me, like someone had scooped out my chest and left me hollow. My phone buzzed. Text from Thomas. Lunch tomorrow? Need to discuss Q3 numbers. I typed back. Sure. Noon at the usual place? Another text. This one from Rachel. Love you. So proud of how far we've come. I looked at her text. looked at the photo of her in Thomas's bed, looked back at her text. I typed, "Love you too." Then I sat there and realized something. I'd loved her. God help me, part of me still loved her, or at least loved who I thought she was, who she'd been before all this. But love doesn't fix betrayal. Love doesn't undo theft. Love doesn't make someone deserve your forgiveness just because you still feel it. I had all the evidence I needed, text logs, bank records, photos that would hold up in court, but I didn't confront them, not yet. Because I realized something important. They'd been planning this for 18 months, 18 months of lying, stealing, destroying me, while I was too exhausted and trusting to notice. They'd had 18 months to plan my destruction. I could take 18 days to plan theirs. And mine was going to be surgical. The next morning, I called Alan, our accountant. "I need a forensic audit," I said. "Everything, every transaction for the past 2 years. And I need a lawyer. Criminal defense, not divorce, not yet." Alan was quiet for a long moment. "David, what's going on?" "I can't explain yet, but I need this done quietly. Can you help?" He could. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a conference room with Alan, a forensic accountant named Patricia Chen, and a criminal defense attorney named Mitchell Torres. On the table between us was a report that was 47 pages long and represented the complete destruction of my best friend's life. The total was $437,000. Thomas had created fake vendors, 3 of them: Apex Medical Consulting, Blue Ridge Wholesale, and Summit Healthcare Solutions. All registered to P.O. boxes, all funneling money back to an LLC that Thomas owned personally, completely separate from our business. He'd used company credit cards for affair expenses and classified them as client entertainment. Hotels, dinners, jewelry, weekend trips, all traceable, all thoroughly documented by Patricia, who had a gift for following money trails. Most damning of all, he'd delayed paying for Rachel's experimental treatment by 6 weeks. The insurance company had initially denied coverage, which meant we had a 6-week window where Rachel was in medical limbo. Thomas convinced her to wait and see if insurance would change their mind, told her the side effects of starting early would be worse. Then, when insurance confirmed the denial, he heroically stepped in with the $200,000, except it wasn't his money. It was ours. He'd embezzled it from our company, paid for her treatment, and made himself look like a saint. And Rachel knew. We had the emails. She'd helped him set up one of the fake vendor accounts. She'd known about the theft, and not only allowed it but actively participated, because the stolen money was funding their relationship. The experimental treatment that saved her life, paid for with stolen money. Money he stole from me, from our company, from our shared future. Mitchell Torres, the attorney, sat back in his chair and whistled low. "This is a felony. Multiple felonies, actually. Wire fraud, embezzlement, corporate theft. We're talking 3 to 7 years in prison if convicted. Maybe more with the dollar amount." "And if I press charges?" I asked. "I'd say conviction is 95% certain given this evidence. The DA would love this case. It's clean, documented, and the defendant's motive is extremely clear." Patricia added, "There's also the partnership agreement to consider. Have you reviewed the clause about criminal conduct?" I hadn't, not recently. But Mitchell pulled out our original business formation documents, and there it was, on page 7, in language Thomas and I had agreed to 6 years ago, when we were young and idealistic, and thought we'd be partners forever. In the event that either partner is charged with criminal activity related to company finances, the charged partner forfeits their equity and can be bought out at 10% of current market valuation by the non-charged partner. Thomas owned 45% of a company currently valued at around $6 million. His share was worth roughly $2.7 million. If I triggered that clause, I could buy him out for 10% of that. $270,000. He'd lose $2.4 million in equity, and I'd own the entire company. Mitchell looked at me over his glasses. "What do you want to do, David?" I thought about 3 years of hospital chairs. I thought about the purple scarf. I thought about Rachel's head on Thomas's chest in that photograph. I thought about every lie, every manipulation, every moment they'd made me feel like I was crazy for having suspicions. "I want devastation," I said. "I want him charged. I want to buy him out. I want a divorce that leaves Rachel with nothing. I want everyone who ever trusted them to know exactly what they did." Mitchell nodded slowly. "That's not justice. That's revenge." "I know. It's going to get ugly, public. Are you prepared for that?" I looked at the report on the table. $437,000. 18 months of lies. 3 years of my life spent saving someone who was betraying me the entire time. I'm prepared. Then let's build a case they can't run from. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. Cold, methodical. I hired a divorce attorney. Prepared, but didn't file papers yet. I worked with Mitchell to prepare criminal charges against Thomas, but didn't file those either. I liquidated personal assets to get cash ready for the buyout. I created a timeline of everything I knew, everything I could prove, everything that would matter in court. And I planned the execution. I chose November 14th for a specific reason. It was exactly 3 years after Rachel's diagnosis date. It was 1 week before Thanksgiving, which meant both of our families would be in town early for the holiday. And it was the day after our company's annual board meeting, which would secure the business side of my plan. I arranged what I told everyone was a family intervention at my house. The cover story was that we needed to discuss Rachel's ongoing recovery needs and long-term wellness plan now that she was in remission. I invited Rachel's parents, my mom, Rachel's sister, Lisa, Rachel's oncologist, Dr. Santos, and our pastor, and Thomas's father, Robert Carter Sr., who I'd always liked despite his asshole son. The real purpose. Witnesses. You can't gaslight someone when 8 people are watching you get exposed. I coordinated with the police. They'd have a warrant ready for Thomas's arrest on embezzlement charges. The warrant would be executed immediately after the board meeting. I prepared the divorce papers. North Carolina is a fault state. Adultery affects alimony calculations. With the evidence I had, Rachel would get nothing. The house was in my name only. Our shared assets were minimal because we'd funneled everything into her treatment. She'd be left with her car and whatever she could pack in 30 days. Everything was ready. The night before, I did something crazy. I took Rachel to dinner at the restaurant where we got engaged. Nicest place in Charlotte. Made a reservation weeks in advance. She was confused but happy. "What's the occasion?" "I just wanted one more good memory," I said, which was true in a fucked up way. We ate. We laughed. She told me about her plans to maybe go back to work part-time, how good she was feeling, how grateful she was for everything I'd done. She held my hand across the table. "I'm so lucky I have you," she said. I smiled. "We're both lucky." I wasn't lying. I did want one more good memory. The memory of how completely clueless she was about what was coming. The memory of her smiling and holding my hand 12 hours before I destroyed her entire life. That night we had sex. She initiated. I went through the motions. Afterward, she fell asleep with her head on my chest, the same position she'd been in with Thomas in that photo. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, and I felt nothing. The man who'd loved her had died somewhere between the pocket dial and the private investigator's report. I was someone new now, someone colder, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to survive is to make sure the people who tried to destroy you can't do it again. I slept maybe 2 hours. When I woke up, Rachel was still asleep next to me. I got up, showered, put on my best suit, navy blue, the one I wore to important client meetings, left an envelope on the kitchen counter labeled, "For Rachel, do not open until 3 p.m. I kissed her forehead. She mumbled something I couldn't hear. I said nothing, just walked out. At 8 a.m., I met Mitchell at his office. He had everything ready. The criminal complaint against Thomas, the divorce papers, a press release about the embezzlement case that would go to the local business journal. Everything organized in color-coded folders like we were preparing for trial. "Last chance to back out," Mitchell said. I looked at him, didn't blink. Not a fucking chance. The board meeting was at 9 a.m., our company conference room. Present were Thomas, 3 of our board advisors, the investors who'd helped us grow, and our company attorney. Thomas was in a good mood, brought donuts, joked about the weather, clapped me on the shoulder when I walked in. "Morning, partner." "Morning." We went through the agenda. Q3 financials first. I let Thomas present his version, doctored numbers that hid the embezzlement. He was smooth about it, confident. The board members nodded along. Then I stood up. "Before we move to Q4 projections, I have something to present." I opened my laptop, connected to the projector, pulled up Patricia's forensic audit report. The first slide was just a title: Financial Irregularities Investigation, Med Supply Solutions, LLC. Thomas's face went pale. "David, what is this?" "It's called evidence," I said. My voice was completely calm, surgical. $437,000 worth. I clicked to the next slide, a chart showing the fake vendors, wire transfers, shell companies, every transaction highlighted and traced. The board members' faces changed. Confusion, then understanding, then horror. Thomas stood up. "Come on, there's obviously a mistake!" I played an audio file. Patricia's voice explaining the fake vendor scheme. Dry, professional, devastating. 3 minutes of her, methodically explaining how Thomas had created fake companies, invoiced our business, and funneled money to his personal accounts. Then I showed the bank records, his personal account receiving the transfers. The expenditures, hotels, restaurants, jewelry, all of it traceable to specific dates. One of the board members, Janet Kim, who'd invested $200,000 in our Series A, looked like she might be sick. "This is embezzlement." "Correct," I said. "I've filed criminal charges. Police have a warrant. They're waiting outside." Thomas's head snapped toward me. "You did what?" I signaled to the door. 2 detectives walked in. I'd coordinated this part carefully. They'd been waiting in the lobby. "Thomas Carter," the first detective said. Thomas was shaking. "David, wait, let me explain." "Explain to the judge." The detective stepped forward. "Thomas Carter, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and corporate theft." He started reading the Miranda rights while his partner handcuffed Thomas. The board members just stared. Our company attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Thomas was panicking now, actually shaking. "David, we've been friends since we were kids. You can't do this." "Friends don't fuck each other's wives." Complete silence. You could have heard a pin drop in that conference room. Thomas's face drained of all color. You know. "I've known for 37 days. I said, "since the remission party, when I watched you 2 through the kitchen window. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out?" The detective was leading him toward the door. Thomas was trying to talk, trying to explain, but I wasn't listening. I turned to our company attorney. "Execute the forfeiture clause in our partnership agreement. I'm buying Thomas out. Have the paperwork ready by end of day." Thomas, almost at the door, twisted around. "You can't do this. The company is mine too." "Not anymore," I said. Page 7 of our agreement. Criminal conduct related to company finances results in equity forfeiture. Your signature is on that document. You agreed to it 6 years ago. He was gone then, led away by the police. The door closed. The board members were staring at me. Janet spoke first. "Did he really?" Steal $400,000 to fund an affair with my wife. Yes. Did my wife know about it and help him? Also yes. Do I have evidence of all of it? Absolutely. I closed my laptop, looked at each of them. I'm buying him out at the contracted rate. The company is mine. If any of you want to pull your investment, I'll understand, but I'm not going anywhere, and neither is this company. Janet was quiet for a moment, then, I'm staying. You just proved you'll protect this company from threats, even when the threat is personal. That's leadership. The other board members nodded agreement. I'd won the business. Step 1 complete. At 2 p.m. I drove home. My house was full of people, just like I'd arranged. Rachel's parents, Robert and Susan, my mom, Margaret, Rachel's sister, Lisa, Dr. Santos, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes, Pastor Mike, and Robert Carter Sr., Thomas's father, who I'd called personally to make sure he'd attend. Rachel was in the living room looking confused. David, what's going on? You said this was about my recovery plan. I walked in, carrying my laptop and a small projector I'd brought from the office, started setting it up without answering. David! Her voice was getting higher, nervous. I pointed the projector at the blank wall above our TV, connected my laptop. Everyone was quiet, watching, confused. For 3 years, I started, and my voice was steady, calm, like I was giving a presentation at work. I sacrificed everything for you, Rachel. My career, my health, my sleep. I held your hand through every chemo session I could make. I cleaned your vomit. I held you when you cried. I slept in hospital chairs for weeks at a time. I never complained, not once. Rachel's face was white. I know, and I'm grateful. Let me finish. I clicked the remote. The first photo appeared on the wall. Rachel and Thomas kissing in the parking garage outside her support group church. Rachel gasped. Her mother screamed, "Oh my God." Click. Next photo. Them at the beach in Hilton Head. The weekend she told me she was at a cancer survivors retreat. Click. Them entering Thomas's condo building at 11 p.m. Click. Them leaving at 7 a.m. in the same clothes. Click. The jewelry store. Thomas buying her the purple necklace. Click. The restaurant holding hands. Click. The final photo. In his bed, her head on his chest, both laughing. Rachel was crying. David, please stop. No, they get to see all of it. I turned to address the room. Everyone was frozen, staring at the wall where my wife's affair was displayed in high-definition color. My wife didn't just cheat. She cheated with my business partner. My best friend since 4th grade, the man who was my best man at our wedding, the man I trusted with my company and my life. I clicked to a different file. Bank records, wire transfers, the fake vendors. But it gets worse. Thomas didn't just betray our friendship. He stole $437,000 from our company. And Rachel helped him. I showed the emails. Rachel's name on the fake vendor setup, her involvement in the scheme, her knowledge of where the money was going. Rachel's father, Robert, stood up. His face was red. Rachel, is this true? Rachel was sobbing too hard to answer. I turned to Robert Carter Sr., Thomas's father. Your son used embezzled money to fund their affair, hotel rooms, jewelry, vacations. All of it was stolen from our company, from me. He was arrested this morning. He's being charged with multiple felonies. Robert Sr.'s face was like stone. Without a word, he stood up and walked out of my house. I learned later he never spoke to Thomas again. I looked at Dr. Santos. Doctor, can you explain what happened in August 2022, when you recommended a more aggressive treatment protocol? Dr. Santos looked miserable but professional. I recommended Rachel start an accelerated immunotherapy protocol. She declined based on advice from Mr. Carter. And if she'd followed your recommendation, I asked, she likely would have achieved remission 6 to 8 months earlier. The delay added unnecessary time to her treatment. The room was dead silent. Rachel's mother was crying. Rachel's sister Lisa had her hand over her mouth. My mom looked like she wanted to murder someone. Rachel stood up, stumbled. Lisa caught her. Thomas said the side effects would be worse. Thomas lied, I said. He kept you sick longer, to make you dependent, to keep you away from me, to isolate you so you'd rely on him instead. I let that sink in. Watched Rachel's face as she realized the man she'd been fucking had deliberately prolonged her cancer treatment to manipulate her. "There's more," I said. I played the pocket dial recording. Everyone listened to Thomas call me weak, to Rachel worrying about destroying me, to them laughing about how clueless I was. Rachel collapsed onto the couch, actually collapsed, like her legs gave out. She was hyperventilating. Pastor Mike stood up. "David, I think that's enough." "Not yet." I pulled the manila envelope from my bag, slid it across the coffee table to Rachel. "Those are divorce papers. I filed them this morning. North Carolina is a fault state. Adultery affects alimony. You get nothing. The house is in my name. You have 30 days to vacate. Take your car and whatever you can pack. That's it." Rachel's hands were shaking too hard to open the envelope. Her mother did it for her. Read the first page. Started crying harder. I looked at Rachel one last time. Really looked at her. Tried to find anything left of the woman I'd married 13 years ago. Couldn't find her. Just saw a stranger who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way while I was trying to save her life. "I loved you," I said quietly. "I loved you so much that I gave up everything to keep you alive. I thought that was enough. I thought love and sacrifice and devotion were enough. But they weren't. Not for you." Rachel was sobbing. "David, please. We're done." I picked up my pre-packed bag from the garage where I'd hidden it that morning. Hugged my mom. She was crying, but also looked proud in this fierce, protective way. "Ah, where are you going?" she asked. "Somewhere they're not." I walked out of my own house, got in my car, drove away without looking back. I expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, satisfied. Instead, I felt empty, like I'd detonated a bomb and now had to stare at the crater and figure out what to do with the wasteland I'd created. But the fallout was just beginning. The next week was chaos. My phone didn't stop ringing. 247 missed calls. Text messages from friends taking sides, trying to get my version of events, asking if the rumors were true. The local business journal ran a story about the embezzlement arrest. Med Supply Solutions COO arrested for $437K fraud. It spread through Charlotte's medical community like wildfire. Thomas's reputation was destroyed overnight. He lost his volunteer position at the hospital foundation. His country club membership was suspended pending investigation, which is rich people code for "you're out." Rachel's cancer support group found out. Several members reached out to me directly to apologize. "She brought him to meetings," one woman wrote. "We thought he was a friend. We had no idea." The group leader asked Rachel to leave, said her presence was disruptive to the healing environment. Rachel lost her entire social support system in 1 week. Her job became untenable. She worked at a healthcare tech startup. The fact that she'd had an affair with a medical supplier while helping him embezzle created massive conflict of interest problems. She went on indefinite medical leave for mental health reasons, which is corporate speak for "please resign quietly or we'll fire you publicly." She moved in with her parents, 37 years old, fresh out of cancer, divorced, jobless, living in her childhood bedroom. Her sister Lisa called me that first week. "She's not eating," Lisa said. "She's having panic attacks. She tried to—" Lisa's voice broke. "She tried to hurt herself, David." I hung up. I couldn't handle it. Not yet. Wasn't ready to feel guilty for the consequences of their actions. Thomas posted bail, $50,000. His father refused to help, so he drained his retirement fund. He pleaded not guilty initially, then his attorney convinced him to take a plea deal. 18 months in prison, 500,000 in restitution, loss of his business certifications. He'd never work in the medical supply industry again. The Charlotte Observer ran a letter to the editor from Robert Carter Sr. I still have it saved. I raised my son to have integrity, honor, and respect for others. I don't recognize the man he's become. I'm ashamed to share his last name. I pray he finds redemption, but he will find it without my support. Thomas's mother tried to defend him on Facebook. The comments were brutal. She deleted her account within 48 hours. Our church split down the middle. Half the congregation believed in forgiveness and grace for Rachel. The other half sided with me. Justice and accountability. Pastor Mike tried to preach about mercy. It didn't work. The fights got so bad he resigned 3 months later. Week 3 after the intervention, Rachel's sister showed up at my apartment. I'd been staying in a month-to-month rental downtown while I figured out my next move. Lisa was crying before she even started talking. "You need to see what you did," she said. She showed me photos on her phone. Rachel, skeletal thin again. She'd lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. Photos of visible cuts on her arms, self-harm. Then the hospital photo. Rachel in a hospital bed, tubes in her arms after an overdose on sleeping pills. "She tried to kill herself," Lisa said. Her voice was shaking with rage and grief. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Sat down hard on my couch. "She's broken, David. Completely broken. And I know she hurt you. I know what she did was unforgivable. But did she deserve this? Did she deserve to want to die?" I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Lisa was crying harder. "I lost my sister once to cancer. I thought we got her back. But now she's gone again, and this time it's because of you." "Is she okay?" I managed to ask. "Physically? Yes, mentally, I don't know if she'll ever be." "I'm sorry she's suffering," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want her to die. "But I can't save her. Not again, I can't." Lisa looked at me like I was a monster. "I never want to see you again." She left. I sat in my apartment for hours, staring at nothing. That night I called Dr. Sarah Brennan, my therapist. Had an emergency session at 10 p.m. "Did I go too far?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" "I wanted justice. I didn't want her to die. Her suicide attempt isn't your fault, David. Her choices led here, not yours." But I exposed everything. I could have divorced quietly, handled the embezzlement privately. Could you have? Would that have felt like justice? I thought about it. About 3 years of hospital chairs, about the pocket dial, about the photo of her in his bed laughing, about $400,000 stolen while I was trying to keep us both afloat. "No," I admitted. "It wouldn't have." Sarah leaned forward. "You're allowed to want justice. You're allowed to protect yourself. You're allowed to make sure they faced consequences for what they did." "Then why do I feel so fucking hollow?" "Because revenge doesn't heal wounds, David. It just ends the war. Now you have to figure out how to live in peacetime." "I don't know how." "That's what we'll work on, together." I kept going to therapy. Twice a week at first, then once a week. Started sleeping better, started eating better. Joined a gym, took up boxing because I needed somewhere to put the anger that still lived in my chest like a burning coal. I heard updates about Thomas through mutual friends who hadn't completely cut ties. He took the plea deal, served 14 months in minimum security prison. Got out early for good behavior, moved to Oregon. Last I heard, he's working construction and going to AA meetings, trying to rebuild his life from nothing. I hope he makes it. Not for me, for him. Everyone deserves a second chance at not being an asshole. 6 months after the intervention, I got a letter from Rachel, forwarded through my divorce attorney because she didn't have my new address. It was handwritten, 3 pages. I read it 3 times. She didn't make excuses. Said she was in intensive therapy, on medication for depression, trying to understand why she'd destroyed the one person who'd never given up on her. The affair started because I felt dead inside during cancer, she wrote. Thomas made me feel alive, but that's not an excuse. I knew it was wrong. I knew you were sacrificing everything for me. I did it anyway. She admitted she didn't know about all the embezzlement, but she knew enough, knew some of the money was questionable. Chose not to ask questions because ignorance felt safer than truth. You deserved so much better than what I gave you, she wrote. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. But I'm sorry anyway. I hope you find happiness, real happiness, with someone who deserves you. The last line broke me a little. You were right. I loved what you gave me, not you. I'm trying to learn how to love myself so I don't destroy anyone else. I kept the letter, didn't respond, but something in me softened. Not forgiveness exactly, more like releasing the death grip I'd had on my anger. I told Sarah in our next session, I think I'm ready to forgive her, not for her, for me. What does that look like? It looks like accepting that she was broken and she broke me, but I don't have to carry that brokenness forever. It looks like wishing her well from a distance. It looks like being grateful for what we had before it all fell apart, and being okay with the fact that we'll never have it again. Sarah smiled. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. 8 months after the intervention, Sarah said something that changed everything. We were ending a session. I was getting ready to leave. She stopped me. David, wait. I need to tell you something. I turned. Okay? In 6 weeks, you'll no longer be my patient. My professional obligation will end. I was confused. Are you firing me? She laughed. No, but I won't be your therapist anymore. You'll be graduating, so to speak. You're healed enough that you don't need weekly therapy. You'll be okay. Oh. I felt strangely sad about it. Sarah had been my anchor through the worst period of my life. But, she continued, and she looked nervous, which was new. I'd like to have coffee with you, as friends, maybe more eventually, but only if you want that. I stared at her. You want to date me? I think you're remarkable, David. I've watched you go from broken and angry to whole and healthy. I'd regret not asking, but I'll understand if you say no. I smiled. First genuine smile in months. I'd like that. Coffee, friends, we'll see where it goes. 6 weeks, she said. No therapy talk allowed. Deal. 10 months after the intervention, I had my first date with Sarah. We met at a coffee shop she picked. Neutral ground, public place, low pressure. I was nervous as hell. She was wearing a purple shirt, and for a second I felt that old stab of pain. But I breathed through it. Purple was just a color. It didn't own me anymore. We talked for 3 hours about books, travel dreams, her work, minus my case, my business. She asked if I was ready to date again. Honestly, I don't know, but I want to try. I won't hurt you, she said. I promise. I believe you. And that's new. We walked through a park after coffee. She reached for my hand. Mine was sweating. She squeezed gently and didn't let go. For the first time in a year, I felt safe. The next 4 months were slow, careful. We took it easy. Movies, dinners, a weekend trip to Asheville where we got separate hotel rooms because we were being cautious. Our first kiss happened in her kitchen while we were making dinner together. Completely natural, completely perfect. I introduced her to my mom. Margaret loved her immediately. She's good for you, Mom said. I can see it in your eyes. You're happy again. I was. One night, about 14 months after the intervention, Sarah and I were at her apartment watching a movie. She paused it suddenly. I love you, she said. I looked at her. This woman who'd helped me rebuild myself from rubble, who'd seen me at my worst and stayed anyway, who made me laugh and feel safe and believe that maybe not everyone was going to destroy me. I love you too, I said. I didn't think I could love again. But I do. We got engaged 6 months later. Small ceremony planned, just close friends and family. No big production, just two people who found each other in the aftermath of other people's destruction and decided to build something new. My business thrived. Sole ownership meant I could make decisions faster, pivot when needed, take risks I couldn't before. Revenue hit $12 million last year. Hired a great new COO, a woman in her 50s with 30 years of industry experience who I vetted more thoroughly than the FBI vets presidential candidates. I'm healthy now. 175 pounds, sleep through the night, exercise regularly, have boundaries, say no when I need to, don't people please anymore. I'm not the same man I was before Rachel's diagnosis. I'm not the man I was during her treatment. I'm not even the man who executed that revenge plan. I'm someone new, someone who survived hell and learned to bloom anyway. 2 years after the intervention, which is now, which is today, which is where this story ends. I'm 41 years old and genuinely happy. Sarah and I are getting married in 3 months. Small wedding, mountain venue, just the people who matter. I don't think about Rachel and Thomas much anymore. When I do, it's with a kind of distant sadness, like remembering a car accident you survived. I heard Rachel moved to Arizona, works in nonprofit cancer advocacy, ironically, remarried someone she met in her therapy group. I saw her Instagram once. A mutual friend showed me. She looks healthy, happy, good. She deserves a second chance. Everyone does. Thomas got out of prison, moved to Oregon, works construction. I heard he's in AA and therapy, trying to make amends for his past. I hope he succeeds. Not for me. For him. Carrying that weight forever would destroy anyone. Robert Carter Sr. reconciled with Thomas recently. It took 2 years, but they're rebuilding their relationship. I'm glad. Everyone needs family, even people who fuck up catastrophically. Last weekend, Sarah and I went hiking, stopped at a mountain overlook. She asked me, "Do you ever think about them?" Sometimes, less and less. Do you wish things had been different? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About hospital chairs and vending machine dinners and 3 years of sacrifice that ended in betrayal. About the revenge that felt necessary at the time and the guilt that followed. About the hollow victory and the slow, painful healing. No, I said, because if things had been different, I wouldn't be here with you. We kissed. I looked out at the view. Mountains and sky and endless possibility. 3 years ago, I was sleeping in hospital chairs and eating vending machine food and slowly losing myself while trying to save someone else. 2 years ago, I was destroying 2 people I'd once loved because they'd destroyed me first. Today I'm happy. Actually, genuinely, surprisingly happy. The best revenge isn't what you take from someone, it's what you build for yourself after they're gone. It's proving that you can survive their worst and still find joy. It's learning that you were always enough. They were just too broken to see it. I should have been enough, and I was. I just needed to learn that for myself. They taught me the lesson by breaking me. I taught myself the lesson by rebuilding, and that's the whole story. I'm David Mitchell. I'm 41 years old. I'm engaged to an incredible woman who makes me laugh every day. I own a multi-million-dollar company. I sleep through the night. I'm healthy. I'm happy. And the people who tried to destroy me. They're just footnotes in my history now. Characters in a story I tell about how I learned what I'm worth. I was always enough. I just had to burn down the old life to figure it out. And now I'm building something better, something true, something mine. That's all you really need to know.